today just a few minutes early. We'll let people continue to chime in as they can. So thanks again for everybody taking time to join us today. Miss Kelly Olis, our new operations manager, will put a link in the chat. If you'd like to make a donation to the club in lieu of meeting for person, we would very much appreciate it. Please join us next week for Gregory McCauley, former NASA employee who will speak to the mission to Mars. We have had the pleasure of taking our kids down to space camp in Galveston the past few years. So I'm excited for next week also. And then May 13th will be our first meeting in person in about 14 months. So the adorable toddler picking his nose is going to be there with us. No, I'm just kidding. And then Barry Collier, May 20th, and the special My Octopus Teacher, June 10th, and our annual golf outing, June 15th, Mayor Bart Peterson, June 17th. Last week, we had 10 members join our late night Zoom for the first ever International Interclub with the Kiwanis Club of Tokyo. You can watch that link anytime. We've got a few people joining us today. Thank you very much. Again, it's 1 a.m. in Tokyo. I think it's 6,700 miles away. So we appreciate everybody joining us today. If there are any clubs globally that you would like to learn more about, I know Jeff Otis has spoken about his experience in India. That's something that I personally would love to hear more about. So please solicit Jay Brill if you have any thoughts as we head into the summer. So we've got a busy program today. On the PowerPoint presentation, we've got our 2021-2022 club officer slate. Is Max Harper on the line? Would you like to give us 30-second introduction and just touch on your favorite Kiwanis program?
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Eric, and hello, everyone. It's nice to see so many familiar and unfamiliar faces today. My name is Max Harper. I've been a part of this club for a little over a year now. My anniversary of joining was earlier this week, and I'm super excited about the opportunity to serve this club, to serve our club in this way. And it's been fun to instantly just jump in the middle of the pandemic and get involved with the club. But probably it was a tie between the two favorite programs. One was a very recent one with the East Scholarship Award. I was on that committee, and it was just really powerful to hear the students' stories and experiences there. And then the other one was ringing the kettlebells at Christmas for Salvation Army. That was just fun. And it was just a good time to socialize and help an organization that does so much good in the city. But I'm excited to serve the club and to get to know all of you a little bit better as this whole process goes along.
Oh, you're a succinct guy, Max. That's what we love about you. Thanks for sticking to that 30-second guidance. Miss Jackie Clancy, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and giving us a little bit about your Kiwanis history. And I'm not sure if she is on the call today. So Miss Laura Holloway.
Yes, hello. Nice to see all of you and be here together virtually. My name is Laura Holloway. I'm running for the board of directors position and currently a Key Club advisor for Perry Meridian High School. And I've done that since January 2018 and loved it from the beginning. So I would say that would be my Kiwanis program of choice, but really those service projects that we were able to do in combination with Kiwanis members, that's really what made the big impact for me and kind of hooked me from the get-go. So looking forward to working with everyone and furthering that impact.
Well, great. Thank you very much, Laura, for your help and participation and advocacy and inspiration, really, the past few years. Miss Wendy Paddock, thank you very much for stepping up. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and giving us a little bit about your own history.
Okay, well, thank you. I have to say, hands down, Kiwanis is my favorite organization that I've worked with throughout my adult life. Started off in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and continued here in Indianapolis. It's the one organization I knew I would join, and thanks to Jeff Otis, I was introduced to downtown. I think with my total time in Kiwanis, my time as a Kiwanian in Indiana is edging out my time as a Kiwanian in Louisiana, with over, I think, 25 years of experience. So this looks like home, everyone. I love working on the board, being able to help, with policies and member recruitment and retention. When it comes down to my favorite committee and the work that I've done, it is a split between the Abe Lincoln program and fostering families. Abe Lincoln edges. And the reason those two are just so important to me is that I think they have a really great impact in the community, giving a platform for people overcoming adversity, or giving people who are doing a great job who might ordinarily be unsung a pat on the back. And I think those little things that we do for individuals have a much greater effect beyond what we actually do, like that positivity spreads. So that's why those two club projects are so important to me. Outside of Kiwanis, I'm a financial advisor, and I have a daughter and a husband. We love spending time together. And I think of my daughter as a future Kiwanian.
Yeah, I think Wendy's daughter attended her first meeting at 3.5 hours old.
Yes.
She had her Kiwanis onesie. No, that was great. Back at the Skyline Club. Miss Trina Rauterbush, our president-elect. Thank you very much for stepping up for another couple hundred additional hours of participation in the upcoming years. But Miss Trina, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I really appreciate the trust that you guys have put into me in tapping me for this role. My favorite, gosh, I've been part of the club going on a decade. I've had the chance to touch a lot of committees and a lot of projects. Two favorites: one, the program committee, just coordinating the speakers for each of our meetings and getting to highlight and see everything that's going on around the city and the state that we can help amplify through these programs. And then I think one of the memories I treasure the most is chairing the Centennial Playground Project build when we hosted International Convention for Kiwanis's 100th anniversary, just getting to work on the ground with the community organizations with, I think 500 college students that came in and took over a neighborhood and did some cleanup, and we have a legacy project to show for it. So, thank you.
No, that's great. So, Roger, you have graciously agreed to stick on for another term as treasurer. I'm not going to have you speak today just from how the agenda was allocated, but for our interclub attendees today, you've really heard from a handful of the pillars of our club. Everyone who is on the line today, you can tell, are big advocates of our club. If anybody has any further questions, you heard who just spoke, and please reach out to our office if you have any further questions about some of those marquee programs we have. You'll be receiving an email with the slate. Please vote by May 5th. Chair Steve Willem is introducing Josh Peltier, advisor of the Speedway High School Key Club, who will get us brought up to speed on their activities.
Thank you, Eric. Our Speedway Key Club is actually a new sponsorship for our downtown club. I mean, I don't know, maybe in years farther past, we've had a relationship, but I know here recently it's a new sponsorship that we started this year. And so I would like to say, before I turn things over to Josh, I'll say a couple things. First of all, this is the first time I've actually seen Josh. And the first thing I want him to do when I hand it over to him is to correct if I'm mispronouncing his last name, Josh Peltier, who has, Eric has said, is the faculty advisor. So how am I doing so far, downtown Kiwanians, as our club liaison to the Speedway Key Club? I don't know what the guy looks like. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but other than that, I am dialed in and on top of it. But I'm going to turn it over to Josh.
Good afternoon, Kiwanians. My name is Josh Pelletier, and I am with Speedway High School, and I'm the advisor for the Key Club. I'm an Eagle Scout, and I volunteer for the Boy Scouts in the area in our community. I'm a Scoutmaster of a troop in Plainfield. So when the opportunity came up to work with the Key Club, I know service because we do that with the Boy Scouts. And I thought this is something I can certainly do. I'd be excited to help these young people. And so I reached out to downtown, who was very helpful. Everybody has been very kind and very welcoming, and I very much appreciate it, and helped us with tools and a grant and some wonderful things to get us started. And then COVID happened, and I've been calling all kinds of organizations, and I mean, I've been in touch with the track, with the Children's Museum, with the Riley Children's Hospital, places that would be, I think, great places for kids to get involved in helping the community. And nobody is accepting any kind of volunteer for anything because the COVID restrictions are tied in place. So even within internally, it's been very hard for us to get something solid for service. So at this point, what we're trying to do is just kind of retool and be ready to hit the ground running next year. Assuming that everything will be better next, in the fall. To try and get something together. Most of my members are seniors, and they're looking to colleges and looking to the future, and their time is taken up with that. So unfortunately, among hitting the reset with a wonderful sponsor and all that, I also got a reset on the membership. So but Steve has been great. He's been in contact, and I look forward to working in the fall to get some exciting things going here.
No, we appreciate that, Josh. I know how thinly stretched you faculty advisors can be. I had been a K-Kids advisor for 4 or 5 years, and the teachers are juggling 6 or 7 of these extracurricular programs at any given time. So corralling the students, keeping the students inspired, helping us communicate with the young adults. You do more work than we could ever really give you credit for. So thanks, Josh. Thanks, Steve. Steve, next year will be a better year for you. I'm just kidding. Thanks for your leadership there, sir. So I am going to turn it over real quick to our peer, George, in Tokyo. He's a former governor of the Japan district. So George, if you could give us just 30 seconds to a minute, just introducing yourself to our callers today, that'd be great.
Well, thank you, Eric. And also, I would say, thank you for your, cooperation with the first international interclub meeting, between Tokyo and Indy Club, Downtown Club. Yeah, it was very good and very informative, and everybody, attending from Tokyo club enjoyed and learned how it was. It is, the going with regard to the servicing amid the this COVID pandemic in Indianapolis area. yeah, it is a very hard time in Tokyo. Also, we are under the state of the emergency for the COVID until the 11th May. So to that point, all of the nations living in metropolitan area ask not attending outside activities or something like that. So Tokyo off Kiwanis clubs gathering also prohibited. So usually remote type of meeting is going on. So I don't know when this pandemic is going to be over. So until then we endure not doing the service what we expected to do. Anyway, the vaccine is quite late reaching in Japan. So
Well, you're in our thoughts.
yeah, time to endure.
Yeah, no, certainly, George. Thanks again for getting dressed up. I thought I was going to be the only one dressed up. I heard that Mr. Doug Boles had a legacy to continue of wearing ties, so I didn't want you to be the only person on the call with a tie today. So Don Steele, my dad, former past president, is going to give a brief history of our 106-year-old club. As we've been joining some of these other clubs, we've been honored to learn their history. So Dad, instead of 3 minutes, if you could do 2 minutes, Greg's starting to stir in his chair a little bit. If we could get a brief history of Indianapolis Club, please.
This will be quick. It's thanks all today and konnichiwa to our friends from Tokyo and Arigato for being with us. It's just to give you a quick tie. We're going to really talk to Augusta here, but just to show I've got 3 ball caps. Number one, the tie and the visit down there in 2015 for me was great. Now the 2014 hats were on sale, but I was there in 15. I came in as a Navy veteran and was just absolutely shocked of how well that whole staff at Augusta and the people of Augusta treated their veterans. But today I've got to tie you to the Indianapolis 500, my limited edition 100th running of the race hat I stole from Mark Miles. Don't tell him that, Mr. Boles, but I went to high school with him and he left one in his desk. But it's welcome also to Jamaika. Oswald Harding, your Attorney General back in 1987, was a guest, and we introduced him to Kiwanis International, and was one of the big ties for Jamaika to Kiwanis International and the headquarters here in Indianapolis. For decades, the Kiwanis Club of Indianapolis was by far the largest club in the world. Membership for decades was limited to the CEO, president, COO, or CFO of a corporation, or various public leaders like mayors, governors, senators, congressmen. The club was founded in 1916. And as we kind of progressed, I'll kind of keep some of the history to the last 40 or 50 years real quickly. My dad joined in 1961. And when I came back to Indianapolis from the Navy, I could join as a legacy member. So we've had several of us over the years. We've had a father and a son, or a grandpa and a grandson, or granddaughter coming up, that were presidents of our club. I joined in 1982. My son, Eric, we carded him and he joined back in 2011. So we've had 60 years of the Steele family with this club. But some highlights: back in 1982 and 83, a member of ours who ran some hospitals here named Alan Hicks ran a campaign that we raised around $500,000 to entice Kiwanis International to move from some other Midwestern city to Indianapolis. And that $500,000 helped build the headquarters for International up in the northwest side of town. At the time, a few years later, under a president named Jim Blythe, we were one of the first clubs in the world to recruit women members. And I see a couple of those first group on Zoom today. We're just so privileged to get our state treasurer at the time, Marge O'Laughlin. I owed her money, so we made sure we got her into the club. The Marge, our state auditor named Ann DeVore, a great local federal judge named Judge Sarah Evans Barker, and Mary Marsh, who I think is a DePauw University fan. I always kind of get that confused, but it's we had four of the most prominent women in town, and we were just absolutely thrilled to get them in as members. In 1988, we did achieve the goal of getting 500 members into the club, and we were able to maintain that for a while. And to give just an idea of a couple of the longer term programs we've had about a 55-year relationship with the Salvation Army here locally, ringing the bells, competing with the local Rotary Club. Not much competition, but it's fun to have some competition or work with the Salvation Army. And over the past 50 years, we've really built a very substantial foundation just for our club. And that has supported some of our highlight programs that a fellow named Dr. Bob Briggs, back in the early 80s, brought up the idea of an annual scholarship awards program for young men and women that were facing substantial physical challenges, health challenges. And it's been just a hallmark program of our club for the past 40 years. I'd also like to do just a quick call out. We did have an international president back in the late 1950s, Jackson Rainey. We've got a member that's slightly younger than me named Tom Dunham, who was the president of the Kiwanis International Foundation, and a deceased great member of the club for years, General Bob Moorhead, was a officer of Kiwanis International and a true leader of our club in Kiwanis International many, many years ago. That was my what did they call the old zip notes, cliff notes version of the history of the club. But Eric, does that answer the call?
No, that's completely adequate. I appreciate that very much. Mr. Greg Fenning is going to introduce our illustrious guest today.
Thanks, Eric. And I'll keep this brief. Doug is a longtime friend. In fact, I might have met Doug when he was maybe in elementary school, because I've known Doug now for over 25 years, and he doesn't look like he could be that old. He served as Director of Government Affairs for Mayor Goldsmith back in the mid-90s. He's a Butler grad. I know you'll all love that. He's also an IU grad from the IU School of Law. He's actually a founding partner for a race team called Panther Racing. And most importantly, Doug was joined IMS in 2010 as Director of Public Relations, and then became president in 2013 and oversaw the 100th running of the Indianapolis 500. And he has done just a remarkable job. And that's really all I'm going to say about Doug, because he's got so much great stuff to be able to share. But Doug, thank you so much for doing this. I just want everybody to remember, we are so blessed to have the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Indianapolis. It is the greatest spectacle of anything. We call it the greatest spectacle in racing, but it's the greatest spectacle in anything. It's the largest sporting event in the entire universe. And we have it here, and we have the president of IMS joining us today. So thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Greg. It is hard to believe how long we've known each other, and where does time go? It's pretty frightening. Well, first of all, I want to say thanks to everybody. I've had an opportunity on several Mays, or before several Mays, to get a chance to speak to this group of downtown Kiwanis folks, and it is one of my favorite times of the year, because I know how much you guys care about our city of Indianapolis and making a difference and using the platforms you've been given through your businesses to give back and help others in our community. I'm really proud of the effort you have, and excited about this one because it's a little bit beyond our Indianapolis folks. So our friends in Augusta, the folks in Richmond, Tokyo, thank you for staying awake or getting up early to spend a little bit of time with us. We have a connection with you all that is stronger than ever through our good friend Takuma Sato, who won the Indianapolis 500 in 2017. and then got to do it again last year. And I can tell you that there has not been a better champion in the Indianapolis 500 history than Takuma. He has been a great partner with us in terms of promoting our event. He has embraced the champion's role of the Indianapolis 500 in every way that you would expect him to do it. I can pick the phone up right now and call Takuma if I need help to promote the Indy 500, and he's right alongside us. We couldn't be prouder of him as a champion, and certainly he is a threat at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to win every year he runs here. It's amazing how he just hangs around, and when it's time, he's one of the guys at the front. And I'll tell you, when Takuma had a chance to win his first race, and he and Dario Franchitti decided to race for the same real estate in turn 1 several years ago, and unfortunately for Takuma, it ended up in the wall. I will tell you that that day was the day that our fans here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway really realized who Takuma Sato was, and it made him one of our favorite drivers, just because when a driver realizes how important the Indianapolis 500 is, that he will take the risk that Takuma did to try and win it that day, endeared him to all of our fans. So he has been one of our more popular winners because they know that he's willing to lay it all on the line to win the world's greatest race. So thank you for that. I also had an interesting connection for me. I got a chance when I was at Panther Racing to work alongside Takuma Sato. I called race strategy, for Kosuke Matsura. And I got to call race strategy for Kosuke when we actually raced in Japan at Motegi. And just seeing the way that the country embraced Kosuke was a lot of fun, and still stay in touch with him. He's racing GT cars. I know he's done some TV work in Japan, but have had a long history with him as well. But quickly, I'll just give you guys an idea of where we are at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You folks from down in Augusta have already battled through these challenges that we're all facing. You know, a year and a month ago, the world changed. We were in St. Petersburg to kick off the NTT IndyCar Series, and we'd left Indianapolis, and we knew COVID was a thing, but we didn't know what kind of thing it ultimately was. We got to St. Petersburg ready to kick our season off, and the world changed. The NBA found a player who tested positive. The NCAA decided to have games without fans, and then ultimately decided to not even have a tournament. And we were in St. Petersburg trying to figure out, what does that mean for the NTT IndyCar Series? And for me, what did it mean for the world's largest single-day sporting event, the Indianapolis 500, that was just a little over 2 months away? Roger Penske, who'd purchased the Indianapolis Motor Speedway just a couple months earlier, asked us all to gather back in Indianapolis, and brought the leaders of the NTT IndyCar Series, Penske Entertainment, as well as those of us here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we made the decision last March to move the Indianapolis 500 to 2020 August. And we thought, no problem. By the time we get through August, this thing's going to be beyond us. We're going to get to have a normal Indy 500. It'll just be on the wrong date. And as we all know, the world didn't see COVID disappear in the summer of 2020. And we had to battle through an awful lot of changes. I'll tell you that we also thought that 2021, we'd be in good shape. Obviously, that's not the case. So over the last year, really, we've been working with our local and state officials to try and figure out how we can safely bring customers and fans back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I tell this story now, looking back on it, and you know, I'm passionate about the Speedway, passionate about Indianapolis, passionate about Indiana, and oftentimes we just speak from the heart. And last year, when we moved the race from March to August, Roger Penske said, and I echoed, that an Indianapolis 500 without fans was not an Indianapolis 500. It was just another race, because we firmly believed that we were going to get to have the race. And we believe that what makes our race special are the fans. And ultimately, we didn't get to have those fans last year. And I will argue that it was still an Indianapolis 500, but was certainly muted because we didn't get to have fans. So we've been focused really since that date of trying to figure out how we can get fans back, worked with the state and with the city. And we have made an announcement in the last week, really, that the Speedway will host up to 135,000 people for the 105th running of the Indianapolis 500 on May 30th. And while that seems like a whole bunch of people in a world where you're now just starting to see venues start having 30, 40, the Braves just announced, I believe, that they'll have up to 55,000 beginning in May coming to their events. But we have to do it in a safe way. And the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is basically a mile long by a half a mile wide, 235,000 permanent seats. In a normal year, we have over 300,000 people here. When we had our 100th running in 2016, we had 350,000 people here. Every year on race day, we're the second largest city in the state of Indiana inside our grounds. And we take a lot of pride in that. But we also now know that we have to take an awful lot of effort to be responsible in the way that we host people and fans back here at the Speedway, because we want to be the catalyst for our country getting back on track, for our economy getting rolling again, for fans and people being able to do some of the things that make being sports fans or event fans so special. So working with the state and the local officials, we put in some protocols for the Indianapolis 500 and for the practice days and the GMR Grand Prix that leads up to it, that we feel pretty comfortable with, and we think is going to allow us to host those fans in a very, very safe way. It's been a challenging year for somebody like Roger Penske, who, after 75 years of ownership, the Holman George family sold the Speedway to Roger Penske. It was announced in November 2019. The deal closed in early January of 2020. And just 90 days later, we are dealing with a completely different facility and event and P&L that Roger Penske and his team had no idea that we would be challenged with. We're fortunate as Hoosiers and as folks in Indianapolis to have Roger Penske as the new owner and caretaker of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He hasn't slowed down. He hasn't paused. He hasn't once said, "Oh my gosh, why did I make this purchase when I did? Oh my gosh, this is terrible for me." All along, he said, "This is a long-term investment for my family and for me. This is a legacy project. I didn't do this for a quick return. I did this to make the Indianapolis Motor Speedway better and continue to grow on what Tony Holman has allowed the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to do since he purchased it after World War II. It's amazing to me. Roger Penske's basically been here, with the exception of a couple of weeks when everything was locked down in the world in March and early April, has been in here at least once every week. He comes back in this evening and he'll be here all day tomorrow. And all he has done is really said, how do we continue to invest in the Speedway so that we make the customer experience better? So we make sure that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Indianapolis 500, and the events that we hold here are in a better place when we come on the backside of this pandemic than we did on the front side. He hadn't once talked about the money he's lost, which is tens of millions of dollars in revenue and other pieces that we've just had to forego because we haven't been able to have our traditional events. But rather, he's focused on how do we make this place better so that when we come out on the backside, it's much better for our customers and our fans, and those people who've come year after year after year to the Speedway understand why they loved it so much and understand why they missed it when they couldn't be here, and continue those traditions that make the Speedway so important. So we've obviously pared down on some things. The concerts, which have become a part of our Indy 500 month of May, we've canceled because we just couldn't figure out a way where we could take our standing room only concerts and shove 30 or 40,000 people right up next to a stage in a safe manner. So those will come back in 2022. And then a lot of the decisions we've made related to safety protocols leading into the 500 are maybe controversial, depending on what side of the political fence you view it or what side of the science you view certain things. So masks, for example. Significant portion of people that don't believe you should have masks when you're outside. Significant portion of the people believe that they're absolutely essential when you're outside. And in order for us to make a decision to have a race with fans, masks was one of the things that we agreed that we were going to require our fans to have when they're inside the gates at the Speedway. We're in this weird time frame where a lot of the detail and decisions we have to make in order to service 135,000 customers in less than or 30 days, essentially from now, we had to make decisions based on data that we had from March and even a little bit in early April, not based on where we hope we're going to be in June. And our race is basically June 1st, right? We're May 30th. So we have made a decision that we want to be the bridge from the February, March, April data to what we hope is really great data in June, and that summer becomes a much better place. And part of that was making a decision to mandate masks as a stipulation to come to the Indianapolis 500. We reached out to our customers and said, hey, if you're not comfortable with the protocols we have in place, one way or the other, whether you don't think they're enough or you think they're too stringent, we want to give you an opportunity to just take a credit for next year. And hopefully in 2022, when you come back, it's the year that we expect. So my biggest challenge, honestly, I think between now and race day, beyond trying to get the venue reseated, getting tickets out, getting ourselves prepared in a really short time frame for still a large crowd, is just talking to our customers and reminding them that these protocols, believe they are the right ones or not, are essentially what allowed us to get to a point to have fans. And I'm hoping that our fans will say, you know, whether I believe in a mask or not, it's only 4 or 5 hours of my day. I'm going to do the right thing to make sure that we get to have a 500 in a safe manner. So I'm looking forward to hosting people here. I'm looking forward to 105th running of the Indianapolis 500. We're looking forward to celebrating Takuma Sato's win in 2020 with some fans. It's really interesting to watch him win the Indy 500 and get out of his race car and stand on the aero screen and put his hands in the air. And he's so emotional, and he's got such a great, you can see the energy in him, and you could see in his own body and his eyes when it really hit him that I'm celebrating up here on Victory Podium and there's nobody in the grandstands. So we want to give him an opportunity to be celebrated by our fans for being only the 20th driver in our history to win more than one time. And it's pretty exciting to have that. In a couple of days, we're going to have Takuma here, and we're going to unveil his banner over gate 2, which is the tunnel that everybody comes in normally when they come to the Speedway. It's become a little bit of a tradition for us with our winning drivers. And then we will roll right into May. Another thing I'll touch on, and then I'm happy to take some questions. In August this year, we've significantly changed the way that our NASCAR weekend will roll. So our first NASCAR race at the Speedway was in 1994, and it was held on the oval, the Brickyard 400. Last year, maybe one of the best things to come out of the pandemic for us was in the need for IndyCar to find another place to put the GMR Grand Prix. We reached out to our friends at NASCAR and said, would you mind if we did a doubleheader weekend where we had NASCAR and IndyCar on the same weekend at the same racetrack? And it was something we've talked about for the last 2 or 3 years. In fact, NBC, who's a TV partner of the Speedways and the NTT IndyCar Series, as well as NASCAR, has been trying to move us to a point where we could do that at some event. And my good friend Eddie Gossage at Texas Motor Speedway has been the loudest to say it should be done at Texas Motor Speedway. And I've always said, sort of behind closed doors, there's going to be a double between NASCAR and Indy. It needs to be here at Indianapolis. And COVID really forced that to happen. And this year in August, we will have the IndyCar Series on our road course, the Xfinity Series, which is the step below the main level of NASCAR, on our road course. And then on Sunday, we will have the NASCAR Cup Series cars on our road course. So looking forward to it. Unique spin of that is Jimmy Johnson, 7-time NASCAR champion, who had retired from NASCAR, who is running virtually the entire IndyCar Series on all the road courses. He's not going to run the ovals as a rookie. We'll get a chance to race at the Speedway on NASCAR weekend, but he'll be in the wrong car for a lot of those NASCAR fans when you put him in an IndyCar and running there. So looking forward to August. It should be a lot of fun. And then the final thing that I think has some global implication for the city of Indianapolis is the Indy Autonomous Challenge that we have announced alongside of Energy Systems Network here in Indianapolis and a lot of our Indianapolis business partners, where we've encouraged universities from around the world to come in and help us put on a race with autonomous cars driven by technology, not by remote control, but by software, that 30 plus universities from 4 continents from around the world will be competing here at the Speedway for $1 million prize to compete side by side at up to 180 miles an hour in cars who will have to make their own decision based on the software created and how to navigate around other cars who have software telling them how to do it. It could be an amazing event. It could be an event where none of the cars make it to the end. Sort of like the DARPA World Challenge was a catalyst to the autonomous car industry we see today. We think this edge case testing of racing through autonomous is going to put all these universities certainly on the map in their programs. We're excited to highlight the importance of technology and really the technology infrastructure in terms of businesses and bright minds that already live in Indianapolis to hopefully encourage people to continue to invest their money through their companies, relocating companies, and some of these brilliant students. We hope they decide to make a career in Indianapolis, and we're going to do it through the Indy Autonomous Challenge. So looking forward to that in October. But that's really how the season looks. Right now we are flat out getting tickets. I got to see our first batch of tickets getting ready to go out to customers last night, actually shipped today for our Grand Prix as we've reseated the GMR Grand Prix. And we're about 25% of the Indy 500 venue had been reseated last night, and those tickets will go out to our Indy 500 customers probably in the next 10 days. And then we open up here, and I look forward to seeing folks through the gates for the first practice for the GMR Grand Prix, and then that race. And then it's on to the oval and getting ready for the 105th running of the Indianapolis 500.
Doug, as you were touching on autonomous racing, where is the height of the sport now? I'd heard years ago about, racing go-karts in gymnasiums, sophisticated go-karts. But how would you describe the status of that now?
Well, so in terms of the NTT IndyCar series right now, the place in terms of technology for that part of the sport, I mean, virtually everything on the car, the data on the car, if it moves or changes from a static state, we're following that real time. A lot of that information goes back to the tire manufacturers that ultimately makes our tires on that we have on our OEM cars on the road better. Some of the technology that we learn is applied to a lot of the different safety components. Both Chevy and Honda are learning better fuel mileage, ways to develop fuel mileage through the computer programs that actually control the car's engines, that they learn that through the racing. So some of that transfers over. But in terms of the true technology, like the AI through the Indy Autonomous Challenger, some of the things that are being done with alternate power in terms of battery power and some of those components, we're just beginning to get into that with the NTT IndyCar series. So you'll see that over time. As a promoter, it's important for me to remind folks that none of this is designed to replace the race car driver. It's part of the reason people come to the 500 is to root for their favorite driver, no matter what kind of car they're in. So for me, it's a balancing act. We want all this technology, but we also need the personalities of the race car drivers to continue to move forward. So we learn awful lot through technology in the sport right now, but there's an awful lot that'll happen, I think, over the next 3 to 5 years as OEMs also change the way that they operate, and then that's going to change the way that we operate on track.
Doug, we've got a number of great questions in the chat, and I'll start out with one. You mentioned the concerts aren't going to take place, and you've had to change a lot of things. What else isn't going to take place, or what else have you had to change, including the parade? And you can talk about your porch party component of things.
So definitely, we have had to change a lot of things. And one of the things that we are restricting for the month of May in the Indy 500 and the Speedway, those concerts aren't going to happen, but we're also not allowing folks in the infield on the spectator mound. So there's infield access to the bleachers that are in the infield, but the traditional tailgating inside component, which is very important to the event and to a lot of people, their experience is tailgating. They don't sit in the grandstands. It was just too hard for us to really think through how do you manage the masks, how do you manage the social distancing, and as we talked to the city, we felt like this was one of the things that we just are going to have to push off until 2022. So that'll be a big change for a lot of our customers. Those customers typically just buy a GA ticket, so we're working with those customers to get them upgraded at no additional fee into the grandstands for this year, and then hopefully we'll get tailgating back next year. The 500 Festival, which is the partner that we work with, who really promotes the Indy 500 outside of the racetrack around central Indiana and throughout the state through the program they have with 4th grade students who learn about all things Indiana and STEM through an education program there. The 500 Festival Parade, which is the day before the 500, traditionally 300,000 plus people line Indianapolis for that parade. Just the same thing again, just too difficult to manage. So what we have done is we've asked our folks in central Indiana to decorate their porches, register with IMS and through the 500 Festival. And then on the day before the race, we're going to send our 33 drivers out to some of those homes that have been decorated. We really want them to turn them into floats, if you will, sort of like when you have your holiday lights up around your house, and at Christmas time, people drive around in neighborhoods to look at lights. We're hoping people will decorate their homes that way. So it's sort of a reverse parade. We're calling it the 500 Spectacle of Homes, alongside our friends at the festival and AES to make sure that that's a successful program. And then in 2022, get to bring that parade back.
Great. So obviously the Speedway has done a lot of change in even things that it hosts. I can remember, as you can, we had one race. That was it. And now you've got multiple races. You're doing concerts. Most of us remember that F1 was in Indianapolis for a while. Are there any thoughts about potentially bringing F1 back or any other kinds of events that we're not seeing today?
Yeah, so I'll touch on the other music or other events, and then I'll talk about Formula One because that's an interesting conversation. Other events, one of the ones that maybe we're most celebrated for was hosting the Rolling Stones here on July 4th several years ago as a standalone concert. 55,000 people in the infield, standing, no seats for a Rolling Stone concert was pretty spectacular. We don't want to be in the music business necessarily. We're not trying to compete against the Live Nations of the world who have great venues all over the country. However, we do like iconic events. So to the extent we could ever find something else like a Rolling Stones, when the routing schedule worked and the radius clauses that really impact when and where bands can perform, we would look at that as another iconic event somewhere down the road, just because it was really fun to have the Rolling Stones here in Indianapolis and at the Speedway when they came. As for Formula One, we hosted Formula One here in the early 2000s, and ultimately Formula One left Indianapolis, left the United States for a long period of time. They race at COTA in Austin, Texas. One of the things we have maintained is our FIA Grade 1 status, which means that our track is as highly rated in terms of safety and preparation for the highest level of racing in the world. There's only a handful of tracks in the world that are an FIA Grade 1. In fact, there's only 2 in the United States, COTA in Texas, where F1 runs, and then here at the Speedway. We're unique in that we have 2 of our layouts, our road course layouts, that are FIA Grade 1. So you could switch and do different layouts and be in that FIA Grade 1 category. We'd love to have Formula One back. Formula One, I think, is interested in coming back under the right circumstances. It had to be right for us and right for them. One of the things that Roger Penske brings that we maybe didn't have ourselves without Roger, he's got great relationships, especially with the new head of Formula One through Liberty Media. And there are conversations, friendly conversations there about the potential of coming back to Indianapolis. I still think it's a long shot for a variety of reasons, but at least there's open dialogue there that hasn't been there in the last few years. And in fact, we even talked internally when the Canadian Grand Prix was canceled just a couple of days ago, that we'd be happy to fill in if they needed to come back to North America. Although I think what they would end up doing this year is probably stay in Europe and not have a North American trip back over at that point in time. But dialogues there, having Roger Penske on board certainly helps us with those relationships, and I think both sides are open to it. It just needs to be the right circumstances.
Great. Rob Schlegel, I think you have a question you'd like to pose.
Maybe more of a comment than a question. I think one of the great things Roger Penske did was keeping Doug Boles in his position. Doug, you've just done a great job always for the Speedway, things like shaking hands with fans and that sort of thing. And so we're really pleased to still have you here. I would also say that the media is not going to treat you right no matter what you do. Instead of praising the NCAA and the city of Indianapolis for being able to have the tournament here, they kept putting a story up about one guy from Georgia that we still probably didn't even catch the virus here, and one restaurant that had been open for like 6 months, and there's no proof that that was connected. So don't be disappointed if the media doesn't praise how well you do.
Well, I appreciate it, Rob. First of all, like most of us on this call, there are obviously guests on this as well, but most of us are from here. I grew up in Indianapolis. I lived at 42nd and Kessler until I was 8 years old. And I'm more passionate about this city and this state than just about anything, except maybe the Indy 500. And I'm more passionate about that. And so to be able to combine that, and I'm a fan. So for me, I truly mean it when I say this place isn't here except for the fans. And for me, my primary job really is to make sure our fans understand how much we appreciate them coming. Coming to the Indy 500 is not a simple task. It's 300,000 plus people in a normal year that show up. It is a full day commitment. It's a financial commitment. You park, you have to walk. It can be hot. It can rain. There's all kinds of things that can happen. And for our customers to continue year after year to come back to the Speedway really means an awful lot. And it's not necessarily about the race. The race is part of it, but it's about that entire experience and who brought you the first time and the memories that this place conjures up every time you walk through it. So I'm proud to represent all of us as Hoosiers, and certainly all of us as Central Indiana residents around the world through this amazing platform that is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we're used to having the media on both sides of the fence, and you got to take the good with the bad. And one of the things since I've been here that I think we've changed the way we work. The Hallman George family was very private, and very rarely did you hear or see Tony Hallman or Mary Hallman George, or even Tony George at some level in the media. We have made it an effort that no matter what the issue, good or bad, that it's important for us to have a voice in it and be able to stand up when we have to take our hits, and also be able to stand up when we get a chance to celebrate. So we're used to we're used to sort of the mixed results you get from the media, and we're going to do everything we can to have a safe Indianapolis 500 and get ourselves back to normal for sure in 2022.
Speaking of the media, whether it's NASCAR or really about anything right now, it seems like TV ratings might be down a bit. And yet there's also lots and lots of other streaming opportunities to be able to broadcast things. Where do you see the future for the media side of things with the Indianapolis 500?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've talked about for the last several years. People consume not just sports, but all media in a different way now. And we are still in this world where we look at the Nielsen ratings as sort of the way to measure everything. But there are so many other ways, especially the younger generation of people that consume their media either on their handheld device or through Apple TV or there's a whole bunch of other ways to do that. So we're trying to figure out how to really measure the impact of an event beyond Nielsen. Right now, nobody's come up with the right way to do that. And yet, you also have the opportunity, even if you're watching the traditional cable or over-the-air media. I don't know how many the other night, my wife and I were decided, let's watch TV, which we never do. And so we're sitting in bed going through the channels. I can't believe how many just weird shows are on. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. There's something for everybody on TV. So that's the other impact too. So there are programs that really get to the niche of what you like. And even in the racing circles, if you like NASCAR, you might not like IndyCar. If you like short track racing, you might like it on dirt, but not on pavement. And so even in our own sport, it's so fragmented that it's hard to go through that. This past weekend with the NTT IndyCar series at St. Petersburg, our numbers were up year over year. But if you go back 10 years and look at it, the numbers are down. So it's a great point. We just think that we need to find a better way to really understand how we're engaging with our fans, and certainly off television, we're engaging in a much more robust way through social media and our drivers interacting. And so I feel like we're building stronger relationships with fans through that versus just a straight TV.
And last question we'll get from Troy from Augusta, and also his opportunity to just say hello.
And Troy may be having connectivity issues. So, Doug, just to kind of dovetail on Greg's last point, and I'll kind of take Troy's last question. I was watching that Netflix series on Formula One, and it is fascinating when you're in the perspective of the owners, of the drivers, the mechanics. Has the IMS explored any type of deal behind the scenes access? Again, I mean, you hear about the 9-figure TV deals as people are so thirsty for content. I imagine Roger and Penske's son in media, but no, could you speak to that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. The Formula One Netflix show over the last few years has been really, really popular. It's amazing the number of people that we run into that aren't race fans but have watched that show. And to your point, there's an awful lot of drama and inside baseball and some of the craziness that goes on behind the scenes that's made it so popular. So the NTT IndyCar Series team is working on trying to have something that's similar related to IndyCar. I would say though that program has helped us as well, just because people see it and then assume that the same thing's going on inside the NTT IndyCar Series paddock, and we get that question quite a bit. Just quickly on Augusta, our folks had an opportunity last year. We had some folks from Augusta actually come up to the Speedway. Roger asked them to come up, and we shared a lot of thoughts on how we were going to get through 2020 together, and we have continued to maintain a relationship with the folks at the Masters because we can learn an awful lot from them. Roger oftentimes here says, I want to make sure that the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Indy 500 is the Augusta and the Masters of motorsport. So it's amazing how COVID has forced us to build relationships and lean on each other that are in the same event industry, maybe not the same sport side, but we are really, and that's another good thing out of COVID is we've just decided that, we got to help each other. And if sport, even if it's not our sport, is rising, and even in our sport, if NASCAR is doing well, that probably means that we're going to do well. When we made our announcement, I couldn't believe that we were going to have fans. I couldn't believe the number of people who reached out to me to say, hey, thank you so much. We're watching. We can't wait. You know, presidents of NFL teams that aren't the Colts, right? People from around the country who are like, we're watching you. Thank you so much. We hope that this is the beginning of what will ultimately be a more normal year by the time we get to the end. You know, we obviously, for our friends in Tokyo, we continue to watch. I know that you guys are struggling right now, but we are continuing to root for you in the Olympics. This world needs an Olympics because it's a great way for us all to come together in a spirit of competition that where we, and a spirit of unbelievable stories, no matter what country you're from. And for the Japanese folks to be able to take what was going to be an event last year, move it to this year. I don't think people understand what a Herculean effort that is to take an Olympics and say, hey, we're going to postpone it a year and have to go through all of it. We're so rooting for the folks in Japan to have a great Olympics. The world needs it, and we need them to be successful. And again, that's one of the things that's come out of COVID. I think it's just the ability to root for each other across borders and all come together as earthlings to try and battle something that we all need to battle together.
Doug, thank you so much. You are the right guy at the right place at the right time. And I appreciate all that you do for Indianapolis. Indianapolis is a better place because of you and because of IMS. So thank you for all you're doing. Make sure you tell Beth I said hello. Forgot to say that before. And Eric, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks so much, Doug. And I started following you on Instagram last night. I think I doubled your followers. No, I'm just kidding. And I saw all your sons have the first letter. Yeah. So we have B's.
Okay,
we have a legion of B's. So
yeah, well,
again,
I can remember at one point in time thinking that was the dumbest thing ever, and then you end up doing it, right? And it
works on so many levels.
One letter right when you're yelling at one of them, say, "Hey, I need you," you know.
Well,
Carter, get over here.
So we've got our 6-year-old firm has clients coming from all over the country for the Friday carb day, the Sunday event. We're hearing about 3rd and 4th generation clients taking their kids and grandkids to see the race for the first time. And again, thanks for your hard work. I'm excited. I'm beyond excited to see where Roger Penske takes this event for my kids' lifetime. A small donation we made in your name to a Trinity Haven, a first of its kind program in Indianapolis, providing long-term housing for LGBTQ youth. Please join us next week for Craig McCauley, President and CEO of Grand Universe, an amateur astronomer, former NASA employee during the Apollo missions, and is going to talk about Mars. Thank you so much for everybody's time. Meeting is adjourned.
Hey, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.